you might have about your career. I want to say that there's anything that is career related is on the table. So if you've got a question about your resume, you got a question about a work relationship, you got a question about time management, anything is fair game career related. There's a few ways that you can ask those questions. You can jump in here on Zoom and come off mute, let me know. You can just jump and interrupt me at any point in time. I'm totally used to that and I have fun with it. So if that's one way that you can communicate with me. Another thing is if you don't want to jump in, if you cannot, if you are, at work or something, or you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and type your questions into the comment section. We are monitoring those and I will do my best to answer your questions. And if you are on LinkedIn, same thing. Just type your questions into the comment section. So I'm going to be talking about cultural competency. I mean, maybe it's a buzzword that is floating around, or looking at, how, if we're going to be leaders, that means that we're going to be influencing the culture around us. And if you've joined in with me before, you know that the way that I think about leadership is that everybody is a leader. Every single person is leading towards something. So it's not a question of, am I a leader? It's, what am I leading towards? So right there, you can already start moving from procrastination and, wondering what you should do to, wait a minute, I'm leading. I don't want to be putting stuff off. It's more about what's the direction I want to go. So right there, I want to set the context around the question of influencing culture at work or anywhere, is that you are already leading. So now you're looking at, how are you doing it and how do you want things to change? Because then we can get better data. And when you're moving and when you see yourself as an engaged team member, as a participant, as somebody who is affecting change, you're already making that happen. You're already interacting with others differently. So it's a simple thing, but as you practice that, as you practice seeing yourself as a leader, you are going to be more effective just by way of you noticing that. The study that I will cite here was one done by Ellen Langer, huge fan of hers. She did this thing where they looked at hotel workers, people changing out the bed sheets. This is, I don't know, probably 20 plus years ago at this point. And so they were doing this down in Southern California, and they tracked the people, the workers who they said, look, did you realize that you are doing heavy lifting here? This is actually a great workout. In a lot of ways, you're doing more of a workout than a lot of people who go to the gym. And the other half, they didn't tell that to. And about, I forget how far through the study, more than halfway through the study, they realized that they needed to tell the other half that they were doing a great job of exercise, because the results were so clear that the people who saw their activity as being a workout had better blood results, were losing weight, were happier, and they were like, oh, we have a responsibility to tell everybody this, that, by the way, the work you're already doing is a good workout. And just that shift in the mind, just that shift made a big difference, made a difference in terms of what they could measure scientifically. So I'm going to take a jump here. I don't have an exact scientific thing to back this one up about seeing yourself as a leader, but I think you get it. I think you can see how, just by saying to myself, I am a leader, I am influencing others, how do I want to influence them? Right there, I'm going to be more effective. So that's how to start with leading. So in your culture, in the culture, culture is your environment, whatever that is at work. As you are looking at things that you want to improve there, now we can start to fine tune this more. But before we do that, I want to check in with somebody who I see is on here, see if they have any updates. They have been doing a bunch in their life recently. They are in a transition at the moment. And so I want to make sure that we're able to get them on, as I know they often need to jump a little sooner before the time is up here. So, Eric, if you are available, I'd love to hear from you. I know that you have been going at it and have been having a lot of changes in your career. Got it. Okay. You're just listening in today. Sweet. Well, glad to have you. So I am going to tailor some of what I'm talking about to what I imagine you are working on when making a transition. So yeah, we can totally tie this to the culture. So if you're in a transition point in your career, and you've got the culture of your current company and you're going to the culture of another company. One of the things that you want to do is leave where the environment that you're leaving in better shape than you found it. And that can often be done by just how you have the conversations about your exit. Just looking at it, if I can imagine, oh my goodness, here's some of the challenges that this company is going to face without me here. Okay, I'm going to talk to my supervisor and we're going to come up with a plan on how this stuff's going to get handled and how my exit isn't going to leave them in the lurch. And right there, you're already affecting the way that how that culture is working. And in fact, sometimes in that transition, you can even help somebody help the organization streamline things. So there's ways that you developed in your position that probably helped close some of the loops on things, helped refine things. And just by way of communicating that process with other people, you're going to make it more likely that they will be able to think creatively about your role. And when bringing on somebody else or thinking about bringing on somebody else, it will help them refine it even further. So having good communication about that transition is a wonderful way to leave that culture in a better place than you found it. And that kind of investment is really worth it, especially in a job environment where a lot of people that I've been working with end up going into business for themselves at some point, where they kind of get feedback from the organizations they're in, where they tend to see a problem where there's a certain gap, and they find themselves filling that gap consistently and kind of developing their own expertise in a variety of organizations. And so over time, they might then just say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I see a need for this. All these people that I've worked with in the past kind of have this need. And you know what? They can hire me to help them with this. I have seen that happen increasingly. So that's another reason you just want to keep that relationship healthy. Anytime you're transitioning, you want to keep those relationships healthy. So you want to leave the environment better than you found it. Then, when you're going into a new culture, one of the best things you can do, and if you've been on here before, you've heard me talk about this, is have one-to-ones with people. If you can, if it's part of the culture to where you get to set up one-to-one meetings with everybody that you're going to be interacting with, and you talk about personal stuff. You get to know them as best as you can. What are their hobbies? What do they care about? What are their families like? What are they looking forward to in life? You find out that kind of stuff because that builds a strong foundation and will help the communication going forward. So it's a bit of a time investment up front, but it will pay off hugely in just a few months. And so that way, again, you're recognizing yourself as a leader, as somebody who is caring about individuals, and you're caring about the relationships. So right there, that's going to create more a stronger culture. Thank you, Kelly. So that's one thing to do. And a lot of people, I certainly have discomfort with this. I am a new program at a university, and I had all kinds of imposter syndrome thoughts coming up as I was reaching out to schedule one-to-ones. I was like, oh, do they really want to talk to me for a while? Like, is that are they more advanced than I am, or shouldn't I just know how to connect with somebody in the meeting, or am I a hindrance to them? Look at all that. Look at all those crappy thoughts running around in my head. So I imagine that's probably true for a lot of you, that as you go to do important things in your career, like meeting one-to-one with people, even if it's a conversation over coffee, even if it's you going to the break room together, if somebody's going, hey, can I join you? Right there, I have all kinds of limiting thoughts pop up. So being aware that that might happen, okay, fine, and going forward with it anyway, knowing that you're wanting to create strong connections. So, oh yes, I'm seeing some more chats here. Yep, can definitely feel that performative or like you're being a user. Can you explain how to have those one-on-ones authentically? Ah, good question. So, authentic. Authenticity is a word that can be used in a limiting way. So, and one person who I know is listening in here can relate a lot to this. So I might say, hey, I'm an introvert. That's me, that's authentic. So reaching out and having one-to-ones with people is inauthentic for me. See, because I'm an introvert, right? Well, that is limiting the definition of authenticity. That is a limiting way to look at myself and a limiting way to look at a word. So I like the existentialist definition for authenticity, which is true to who you can become. So am I being true to who I can become? So if I'm an introvert, fine. But can I become an introvert who's also able to have connection with people? Am I an introvert who's also able to take some meaningful risks with people and lean into being an extrovert where I want to? So that is the way I like to set up the conversation around authenticity. Is yeah, I have habits and patterns. I do have a personality, but that personality is not a fixed thing. So then when I'm going into a one-on-one, I can be clearer about the agenda that I have. So I might reach out to somebody and say, hey, we're going to be working together. I would like to get to know you because I want to establish a strong connection right from the beginning because I know we're going to be working together a bunch. And this is something I have found that is really helpful. And plus, I want to get to know you. I like to share some about myself as well. Something like that. Whatever. By the way, anything I say in here, part of the job for you is to take what I'm saying and translate it into whatever works in your environment. So if I am, I'm going to look at this question again, explain how to have those one-to-ones authentically. And a lot goes into this, by the way. So if you are just beginning this process in your career, if you are fresh out of college, or if you have been in the same company for a long time and you're starting to think about doing something else, or if you are actively looking after having been out of a job for a while, anything in this realm. And in fact, even if you're currently working at a place that you don't want to leave, this can be useful to you. So to set up one-to-ones, what I do is I will make a phone call, email, or text message. Sometimes I do a phone call. When they don't pick up, I send a text message. And I say, look, we're going to be working together on this project. I would like to get to know more about you and share some about myself. And in the process, I maybe find out about, how you're developing it at this position and kind of what you want to see happen here. So I'll say that. And then when I'm going into the meeting, I'll say some things very quickly about myself that can establish the kind of ground rules that we're working with. Because in communicating with other people, we're always looking, unconsciously often, but we're looking for what's acceptable. We're looking for how far can I go here? What's the what are we conforming to in this? And so if I want to hear more about somebody's hobbies, I'll say something about mine. So these days, I'll say stuff like, I am somebody who goes into cold water on a regular basis. I find that it really helps bring a lot of mental clarity and helps me feel more confident overall. In fact, I'm going to be doing more of that this winter. I'm looking forward to getting some fantastic footage of me in ice water. Right there, I've said just a little bit about myself, and I've established that I am interested in hearing about what that other person is. What about you? What are you up to? So you can use that, and so you're talking about yourself authentically, because it's true. This is stuff that is about me. But then I'm often going to tailor what I'm saying about myself to the relationship, to the context. So if I'm in a new position, which I happen to be right now, then I'm going to talk about the ways that I fit into that. So I'm now leading a coaching program. So I'm sharing about how I became a coach. I'm sharing a very personal story in just a few minutes. And I have been practicing by the way. So, I've been practicing sharing my elevator speech or whatever you want to call it for years now. So if you're just getting into this, start doing it. In fact, even like I said, even if you're in a company where you're set, you have no plans on going anywhere else, the truth is that the world's always changing and we always need to be developing if we're going to be happy. Research shows that what makes us happy is learning and growing. And one of the key things in learning and growing is telling our story or telling our narrative. Because we see that people who get better and better and better at saying, this is who I was, this is who I am now, and this is who I'm becoming, that those people have a greater trajectory in their life. They can make more progress, they can learn and grow better. So, even if you're set in your ways at your job or you're fine with it, you can start practicing this, talking about who you were, who you are now and who you're becoming. And that's a great format for how to be authentic in one-to-ones. So I was brought on to this company for this thing, because I have experience with that, that, and that. Here's what I'm seeing as the challenges now in this company. And here's where I have a lot of questions about stuff. And what I'm wanting to create here is I think this, this, and this. But as we're talking about this, I want to find out a lot from you about what you see as what's needed here. As that'll be very helpful to me. Look at that. Like that was probably 20 seconds where I said where I'm coming from, where I'm at now, and where I see myself going in relationship with the person who I'm talking to. So I hope that's helpful. So picture yourself there. Right now, as you are listening to this, I want you to picture somebody in your life. And by the way, it doesn't have to be career. But if you're joining in for career purposes, then great. So picture an employee of yours, picture a boss, picture a manager, picture somebody that you are going to be interacting with, or if you're in the job search, picture somebody that you're going to be networking with, perhaps an interview. And now picture yourself saying something like, here's what I've been doing. I've been coaching for over 11 years professionally, or I've been in in product creation, or I've been in marketing in these aspects, or yada yada yada. And as I have seen the need for whatever kind of develop in the industry, I've taken some courses in cybersecurity, say, because I can see how that overlaps here, or I've taken these trainings so that I can be on the edge of learning with where our company's going. And I see that these needs here, and I'm wanting to move things forward to this way. I'm hoping that we can get these kinds of results. And so if I'm in an interview, then I'm going to put the question back to them and say something like, is that what, am I correct in understanding that that's what this position is about? And so now they get to say, oh, yes, exactly. That's what we're talking about. So we're on the same page. And if I'm talking to somebody at work, a manager or boss or a team, and I'm saying, so how do you see this now? So right there, again, you're now establishing more of a context with that person, and you're going in deeper in the relationship, and you're opening the door for them to learn more about them. So I hope that's helpful. I see another question coming in here. So just be picturing that with yourself. So this brings up more questions for, can you explain where EQ comes into the play in the one-to-one process? Whoa. Oh, I love that question. Thank you for asking that question. That's great, and I like it a lot because that's my expertise. This is where we get into even more fine-tuning, and where it becomes less logistical, less tactical, and more about the unconscious space, and more about your relationship with your emotions. So, how EQ plays into having successful one-to-ones is that as the person is talking, or as you're talking to them, you're both having a lot of feelings. And one of the things that we all do is we try to numb feelings that we're uncomfortable with. So if I'm having a one-to-one with somebody, And I have a sense of scarcity, and the meeting's not really going in a way that I think is useful, and I'm kind of finding myself just wanting it to be over, that means I'm having a whole lot of feelings that I'm unaware of and that I don't think I can incorporate into the conversation. And so I am interpreting it as a sort of overwhelm, and I just want to get away from this. And that ends up being a big problem because I might close out the meeting before really getting to what I wanted to get in the meeting. So if I can allow myself to be with more of the discomfort, more of the feelings of scarcity, feeling afraid about some things, feeling hurt about some things, then I don't have to backpedal so much, or I don't have to over talk so much. So in interviews, the biggest mistake people make is they talk too much. And that's coming from a place of scarcity most of the time. And so it's like I'm thinking that I have to try to sell myself. And if I'm having to sell myself, then that's coming from this place of like, well, I'm not really good enough, and so I have to prove myself to you. And the listener, who is ever on the other end of that, gets tired of that pretty quickly. And so there's a lot of ways in interviews, especially, where a real connection never happens. And in one-to-ones, so as I'm having these one-to-ones with the university, where with people at the university, what I'm looking for are the ways that I'm uncomfortable. I'm looking for where I feel hurt or afraid about something, and I'm using that as data to open more doors. And sometimes I'll use it as data to not go somewhere with somebody. So if I'm in a one-to-one learning about another person and I get a sense of fear, and oh, okay, the question I just asked or something I said had them kind of uncomfortable, and you know what, that's not in the direction that I want to go anyway. Fine, then we're not going there. And okay, that's data. That there's something about whatever I just said or whatever that person that just said that there's concern there. Okay, well, cool. That's just data, and I don't have to do anything about it. Yeah, yeah, Kelly. Yeah, data. It makes sense. So EQ is a lot of data. Emotional intelligence is a lot of data. All my feelings, it's a whole lot of data. In fact, it's more than my mind, than my thoughts are ever going to be able to process in one moment. So I get better at the skill of being with my emotions, and I improve my thinking. My thinking gets better and better as I allow myself to be with more of my feelings. Because when I'm not allowing myself to be with my feelings, a lot of my mental energy is going to turning things down, is going to limit things, is going to jumping to conclusions because I'm uncomfortable with reality. And so I want to put things into a box. And that doesn't really help in one-to-ones, doesn't help in building relationships. So the better that I am at being present with fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy, the more effective I'm going to be in my one-on-ones. How do you recommend we record or become aware of that data so we can use that info later? Ah, well, right there, I am going to put forth something that I'd like you to work on. So the question is, how do you recommend we record or become aware of that data so that we can use that info later? You're going to want to get better at using that info in the moment. These are great. No, no, no. Thank you for having questions. By the way, your questions are so welcome as you are joining in on YouTube and LinkedIn Live. Please type your questions into the comment section. Your questions are the fuel for this. Your questions are the thing that is opening the door for you, me, and others listening in to go into. As you're asking questions, I guarantee you lots of people are having these. So thank you. Thank you. And you're demonstrating a form of leadership by asking questions. So let's see. How do I recommend we record or become aware of the data so that we can use that info later? Yeah, that's a big question. So one of the first things that I want you to do is to simply start being more aware of your feelings. So recording that data real time. So you're training your brain and your system to be with the feelings better. So you can keep track of your feelings on a piece of paper. Just saying, oh, I felt this, whatever kind of system you have. If you use voice memos, you might leave a little thing for yourself of this is what I felt in this interaction. So just there, you're training yourself to be more present with the feelings. You're training yourself to be able to use that data in moment to moment more effectively. Then another way that you can do this, as you get better at using your feelings, being with your feelings, allowing that data to come in, then this is a big one, is to allow myself to feel the hurt from mistakes. So if we are learning and growing, we are making mistakes. So as I allow myself to feel the hurt, I want you to start noticing the pain points in decisions you've made. It's like, oh, ouch, I didn't like that one. Oh man, that's a groaner. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I made that mistake. That kind of stuff. Because as I let myself be with the hurt, then I'm going to anticipate those future hurts more effectively, and I'll be able to avoid those hurts. Or I'll be able to go in knowing, well, I'm going to get hurt here, and that's part of how this goes. Like, I know that my feelings are going to get hurt. I'm going to make mistakes here. And instead of avoiding taking these risks and making these mistakes, I'm going to let myself feel the hurt, and I'm going to learn from it. And that's going to help me anticipate things coming down the road even better. And it might even help me anticipate how to interact with others differently so that I might not experience as much hurt. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know if that's helping you in a way to think about recording your emotions so that you can become more aware of that data for future use. So the first step is to just start recording the feelings. Just start being more aware of what you're feeling, in tuning your engine, your machine, yourself to allow that data flow in better. Okay, good. I'm glad this is helpful. And then as you're doing that, as you're allowing yourself to feel more discomfort with things, then it will help you anticipate future hurts better. I've got to have a good example of this. Yes. So one of the things that I'm realizing right now is that there's always a price to pay. Life, like anytime I make a decision, I'm creating one possibility and I am killing a bunch of other possibilities. And so I want to be making many decisions because that's what has me learning and growing and moving through life. And at the same time, I will have to mourn the loss of a lot of things that I don't get to do. And in processing different forms of payment, for example. One of the things that I'm finding is, oh, well, I like to have lots of options for people, and I want people to be able to, work with me in any kind of way that they can. However, on the back end of that for me, it often ends up meaning that there's a lot more work. And there's, different ways of processing because, anybody who runs their own business, about this stuff where you've got to account for everything. And so then I may say, I'm going to be with the upset of cutting off other opportunities for the future of saying, I'm going to um, streamline my processes, and I might lose some business that way, but I'm going to do it so that I have more peace of mind overall, and it will help me open up to more possibilities. So just right there is a way that I'm anticipating future hurts, like future frustrations with billing. And because I'm allowing myself to be with that and say, okay, at the end of the year when I got this stuff coming up, is this really how I want to be spending my time? And I'm going to be more likely to make choices that will be uncomfortable at first so that in the future, I am actually more comfortable. I have more things available to me. I hope that that's a helpful example. I tried to make it mundane and not having to do with relationships as much. It's just more of my internal relationship because we all have this kind of thing going on in many different ways. I mean, we could talk about cooking. We could talk about how I am in the kitchen. We could talk about how you drive, and just look at how if I allow myself to be with my feelings more, that's going to have implications in how I'm driving. Okay, cool. So you're relating to this. I see another question coming in about consulting. Ah, great question. So, do you have any recommendations for working with in the C-suite? Yes. One of the big things in the C-suite is learning how to bottom line. Because if I am an executive leader, I've got so many things coming at me, and in a lot of ways, I've got people who are looking to slough off responsibility, whether or not they know it. And most of us are avoiding taking risks in a lot of ways. And for an executive, part of their job is to help people take more risks. Or they might not say that. They but that's part of what's going on is that they need people to take more risks and put more skin in the game. And so if I'm communicating with somebody in the C-suite, I'm going to say things like, you can expect these results if you keep going with your current strategy. And then that they will say to me then, you, well, you're going to have to explain that one to me. In which case I will, and I'll have the details to back it up. Or they might just say, great, we're going to go in this direction because I don't have time to look at this, and I'm trusting that this person is helping us go in the right direction. So you're going to want to get better at bottom line communication. Another way that people talk about this is, talk to me like I'm in third grade or fifth grade or whatever. And there's a lot of value in that. Now, there's issues with it too, but it is a skill that you're going to develop if you're going to be effective in the C-suite. Let me know if this is helping. The lack, okay, frequent, so leaders who are lacking self-awareness, um, then part of what, so if
Hey,
I'm,
hey,
go
George,
ahead.
let me come off of mute. So I think it may be easier to just talk this one out.
Okay.
So what I recognize a lot of times is that leaders, once you're telling them like, oh, hey, this is how things should go, that lack or fear or avoidance of self-awareness keeps them from really buying in or joining in or really doing the work that they need to do, stuff that you mentioned. Um, do you have some advice, some ways that maybe you can get them to like drop their defenses some and get into some of that self-awareness?
Can you give me a specific example?
Sure. Um, I do a lot of consulting work, DEI work. I do a lot of uh, culture work and employee engagement work. So if I come in and I do a cultural assessment and I say, hey, there's a huge lack of trust between frontline staff and executive staff. When I say that, usually like even though the staff has given me the data, the staff has said this is what we think, what we feel. There's a tendency to say, well, maybe this isn't right. Maybe like basically they're saying I'd like to like negate these things. And when I say to them, well, typically, like this is a very typical response. You want to invalidate the data, but your people gave the data. What we have to do at this point is to do some EQ work where you can become self-aware and find, okay, these are the things that are hindering
Uh-huh.
me. These are the beliefs I'm bringing into this situation. I'm curious if you have some ideas about how to address that avoidance because only if only about 15 people are truly self-aware, it's because it's really tough. It's really tough to be self-aware and it can be painful and scary and that sort of thing. Any ideas about how to get them through that or get them past that point?
Well, send them to me. But before that, um, so what you can do is you actually want to get personal to a level and be pointing out how the issue that you are seeing and that the staff has brought up is to point it out moment to moment with them. So to give examples of it as it's happening. So if they're like, well, here's the data, and they're like, I don't really think that's it. If you can tie it to something personal about the interaction that you're having with them right then and say, well, right there in this interaction, I'm seeing how this is playing out. Now, that's a huge risk. And there are people who are not they're not going to want to look at that. And their system is immediately going to just have them dismiss you and want to get away because they're uncomfortable. But if they really want what you're bringing, that might help open the door. So that's one approach because and again none of this is going to work all you need to have a whole toolbox here of how to approach this and you're going to have to take risks and fail with it and stumble through it to get the results that you want. But how do you let's start with the one that you just brought or my first response. How does that land for you?
I can see that. I can see that. Typically, uh, for me, the first step is to try to get. I don't know about personal, but the first step for me is usually trying to build that sort of connection. To really help them to recognize that, to kind of model it with vulnerability. So that's probably my first step. What I found is that that obviously helps people out because they feel connected. They feel like I don't know, they feel like they can believe in where I'm coming from and feel less sort of intimidated by the fact that I'm asking them to join in and kind of look at themselves, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Usually that works. I guess what I'm thinking is once we get past that point though, uh, do you have anything else that you have either tried or that you think may be a good route to, because I'm not their therapist. And typically what's going to happen is that after I've gotten to a point, after I've gotten to a point where I say, oh yeah, well, here's what we can do, or here's what you're missing, here's the blind spot, and we're kind of talking like two human beings. Typically, it won't be like a pull away really hard sort of situation. It'll be more like a subtle avoidance. So not returning on calls or not moving or procrastinating on things that I've asked for, things that are needed. When I'm seeing that, I'm clearly recognizing it as it's a it's an avoidance because it's comfort. I'm wondering, are there some more tools to maybe
Y-
get
y-
past that?
another thing is that you're going to want to be a fortune teller.
Say it
You're going to
again.
want to you're going to want to be a fortune teller. You're
Okay.
going to want to
Oh yeah. Okay.
predict this stuff and tell them up front that you'll know that we're doing well when you find yourself not wanting to respond to me. You'll know that we're making progress when when you don't want to talk with me. You're going to
I
say
like
that
that.
in however makes sense in your environment, but you want to start predicting the future because that will help them be more aware of what's happening when that and you might even say, look, the changes that we're working on in this company, the changes that you're looking to make don't happen quickly. Um, there's no way that I would expect this to happen in even a few months. Maybe you will see progress, but I'm kind of expecting this sort of time frame with it, and I expect that you know there's going to be times where you don't want to reconnect, or that there's stuff that comes up that you don't really want to look at, and that can be fine. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page as we're going into that. You're gonna have to figure out how
Yeah.
to say that in your environment, but I
Yep.
think how's that?
I like it. I like it. I would say for me, there was a little bit of a blind spot thinking about uh, preempting them with letting them know, hey, this is going to be a thing. Like, this is what you're going to feel. This is what's going to happen. Usually, I find myself doing that after the fact, explaining that, oh, hey, this is a thing that comes up but do it beforehand and to kind of say, hey, this is what's going to happen. These are the things that's so much validity to pretty much what I'm selling, which is, hey, my own expertise in it, and two, that this is a formula, that this is a thing, this is a natural progression and how things work. So I think that is awesome.
Okay, good, 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 good. So you're going to be feeling more of the fear earlier on. So you're part of what you're doing in this too. If we're going back to the emotional intelligence and your emotional intelligence, is that you are anticipating the future hurts and you are bringing those closer to the beginning and addressing stuff earlier. And in that way,
Oh,
you'll probably have more success with it.
yeah, I like that framing. I like framing it like that. I think that is a great idea.
And then another thing too about this stuff in communicating in the C-suite is legacy is looking like again, if we go back to the existentialist definition of authenticity, it's about true to who they can become. And so if a company wants to make some changes and or maybe doesn't want to but kind of has to, then getting to know the person and what they care about and what they want to leave behind
Mm-hmm.
can be really helpful. So you can be accentuating the ways that they're moving in that direction. You're affirming the positive behavior
Mm-hmm.
while tying it to the future goals that you're both aligned on. And so everything can be in that context. So that way, when you're fortune telling, you can say, as you're moving towards this goal, you're going to find these kinds of blocks coming up here. But again, I've seen you make the progress in these ways. And so there you're underlining that you believe that they can do it and in keeping things moving instead of it's what you don't want to do is you don't want to get into a back and forth and a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like that kind of thing is that where people just want to be right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so accentuating the positive is a huge skill. And actually, I'll plug my mentors. A couple of my mentors wrote a book called The Heart of the Fight. It's Dr. Bob and Dr. Judith Wright. They wrote it like it's, about couples. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the framework of it. But dude, it's one of the best business books. So I
Yes.
recommend it. Because they talk about how to use conflict well. And for the nature of what you're doing, you're walking through conflict. You live and breathe conflict. And and so you becoming more adept at your relationships in that conflict is really, I mean, that's what you live and work with.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I feel like I've heard of this book too, in use for business. Excuse me, in use for business. So I think this is going to be a great thing. I'm going to grab that probably today or tomorrow.
Cool, cool, cool. And you know what else is check out I've got a video on YouTube. It's a recorded webinar where I talk about EQ and leadership. And so that will be a helpful thing for you to listen through or watch
Mhm.
as you're looking at this because it's you're you will be as effective in the C-suite. Your effectiveness is going to tie directly to your ability to be with fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're taking a lot of risks in that
'Cause that's where
space.
people live. Yeah.
So I just stay in touch with me too, man, because I appreciate the work you're doing. And I want you to do well. And your questions today have been fantastic. So I appreciate you jumping in and sharing.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, one sec. The video just auto started.
What's that? You broke up for a second.
Sorry, your video just auto started. So sorry that just jumped in. Well, look, I want to thank you, George. I'm going to hop off, give a few more minutes so I can plan for my next meeting. And I just messaged you on LinkedIn. So, yeah, definitely let's stay in touch. I'd like to pick your brain about a few things more.
All right, sounds good. All right, Kelly, take care. And for
All right.
everybody,
Thanks so much, sir. Have a great one.
you bet. So as we're signing off today, just thank you again for everybody who shared and for the questions that came in today. Um, Again, questions are the fuel in coaching. Questions are so wonderful as they invite me and they invite us into a space where we can learn and grow. And learning and growing is what makes human beings happy. So, join me next week. I will be back for Career Lab Wednesday. You can always type in your questions into the comment section on YouTube and on LinkedIn after the fact, and I will do our best to get to those questions the next week. You can set up a time with me, 15-minute call. We'll spend as much time as we need to if you know, depending on what you're working on. And if a coaching relationship is something that makes sense, we'll look at that as well. There's a few ways you can engage with me. You've got me here on LinkedIn. You've got me on YouTube. If you want content that helps you develop your emotions, make sure to be following me on YouTube. I do also post stuff on Instagram. I do ice water coaching and I throw videos on there all the time. That's kind of a fun spot. I share educational stuff there as well. So you can follow me there if you're on that space. And I'm getting into TikTok too, but we'll see about TikTok. All right. Thanks everybody for joining in today. I will be back with you next week. All right. Take care.